Now we must stand with our allies. As regards Planned Parenthood, anyone who has watched this videotape, I dare Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama to watch these tapes. Watch a fully formed fetus on the table, its heart beating, its legs kicking, while someone says we have to keep it alive to harvest its brain. This is about the character of our nation. And if we will not stand up and force President Obama to veto this bill, shame on us.
I mean, how are you going to run for president and you're going to say, this is what I saw in the video, when everyone in the video said, it doesn't exist?
Anyone who has watched this videotape, I dare Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama to watch these tapes. A fully formed fetus on the table, its heart beating, its legs kicking, while someone says we have to keep it alive to harvest its brain.
That the heart actually is still beating.
Is it still in the heart? Yeah, the heart. And you can be in agreement.
We're gonna poke your brains. I'm thinking, no, I don't want to do this.
This is about the character of our nation. And if we will not stand up and force President Obama to veto this bill, shame on us.
Let's turn to the question of abortion, because I know you want to talk about it. One of your opponents, Governor Scott Walker, signed a law in Wisconsin this week which would prohibit abortions after 20 weeks of a pregnancy. On Twitter, Hillary Clinton said Governor Walker signed dangerous abortion restrictions in the law in Wisconsin without exceptions for rape or incest. She called this extreme and unacceptable. Walker retweeted her and called her out of touch with most Americans. What's your position on this legislation which does not allow exceptions for rape and incest?
Well, let's talk about the legislation that's sitting on the Senate floor right now, which does allow for those exceptions.
So
but
let's also
talk about Hillary Clinton's position. Let's talk about what extreme is. It's not a life until it leaves the hospital. That's Hillary Clinton's position. It's Hillary Clinton's position that a 13-year-old girl needs her mother's permission to go to a tanning salon or get a tattoo, but not to get an abortion. It's Hillary Clinton's position that women should not be permitted to look at an ultrasound before an abortion, and yet people who are trying to harvest body parts can use an ultrasound to make sure that those body parts are preserved so they can be sold. That, Jake, is extreme.
Do you, just to clarify, do you think there should be an exception for rape and incest?
I would really be delighted if, for once, the media would ask Hillary Clinton about the extremism of her position.
Well,
it's not a life. It's not a life until it leaves the hospital. My position is very clear. It's been clear and consistent ever since I ran for the Senate in 2010. Anyone can look it up. Yes, I support exceptions, but the majority of the American people now believe that abortion for any reason at all to be paid for by taxpayers after 5 months is an abomination. And this videotape, whether you're a pro-choice woman or a pro-life woman, this videotape is depraved. The casual nature with which these people are talking about fetuses and tissue and specimens. I tell you what, if a woman was looking at that ultrasound at that same stage in her pregnancy, the doctor would not be talking about fetuses or specimens or tissues. They would be saying, look at your baby's heartbeat, look at your baby's eyes, look at your baby's organs.
Carly.
Okay, the question is, how do I feel about the Planned Parenthood videos? I am pro-life. And I believe science is proving us right every day, but you do not have to be pro-life to understand the hideous nature of what is going on here. This is about the moral character of our nation. When you can have employees who target poor communities, who are pushing women into later term abortions so they can more successfully harvest body parts, even though late term abortions are demonstrably bad for women, you can only be horrified when you see employees picking over a petri dish for body parts while they say, look, it's a baby. There is no excuse. Planned Parenthood must be defunded. And I believe and anyone who buys the Democrat argument, with all due respect, anyone who buys the Democrat argument that this is about women's health, you need to look at all of the other facilities that provide women's health services. You need to go look at the facts and how many mammograms they actually do. You need to go look and understand the foundation of Planned Parenthood, which from its very inception targeted poor women, African American and Hispanic women. There are more African American lives aborted in New York City every year than are born alive. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not right. So, if Congress does not have the courage to defund Planned Parenthood, I'll tell you what, President Florina, when we go to zero-based budgeting, I simply will not provide the money to fund Planned Parenthood.
Okay, let's turn to the undercover videos that anti-abortion activists have released in the last couple of weeks. Here's what two Planned Parenthood officials said in these undercover videos about altering abortions in order to be able to retrieve fetal tissue. Here it is.
We've been very good at getting parts on liver because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I get it intact.
I'll mention this to Ian in terms of how he feels about using a less crunchy technique to get more whole specimens.
Ms. Fiorina, less crunchy technique, crushing above and below specific organs to be used for fetal research. What's wrong with that?
Oh my gosh, by the way, this has nothing to do with whether you're pro-choice or pro-life. This has to do with the moral foundation of our nation. If a woman was sitting outside of Planned Parenthood in, for example, her OBGYN's office looking at this ultrasound at precisely the same point in her pregnancy, her doctor would be saying to her, look at your baby. Look at its heartbeat. Look at its fingers and toes. This is an abomination that Planned Parenthood has lobbied against a woman's opportunity to look at an ultrasound before she makes an incredibly difficult choice to end the unborn life within her, and yet they are using that same technology to harvest body parts, which they claim are not a life, in order to sell them to save another life. It is unbelievably hypocritical, and I frankly find it astounding that anyone can defend it.
Well, Ms. McIntosh, let me ask you about one specific aspect of this, because the law on this is clear, and let's put it up on the screen. No alteration of the timing, method, or procedures used to terminate the pregnancy was made solely for the purposes of obtaining the tissue. That is the law. But here's what one of the Planned Parenthood officials says.
If our usual technique is suction at 10 to 12 weeks, and we switch to using an iPass or something with less suction in order to increase the odds that will come out as an intact specimen, then we're kind of violating the protocol that says to the patient, we're not doing anything different in our care of you.
But then, Ms. McIntosh, that same woman says that she's going to ask the surgeon at this Planned Parenthood facility about violating the protocol about switching procedures in order to get better parts. I mean, isn't that a direct violation of the federal law?
I mean, after hours of talking to this staffer in this dishonestly edited video, they got her to say that she would talk to a doctor. That's not an admission of a crime. Listening to this language is ugly and uncomfortable, and I completely understand that. The whole concept of organ donation is a really difficult thing to think about, but the families that benefit from this life-saving medical research are immensely grateful for the kindness that patients do when they donate these things. We're talking about people with loved ones with Alzheimer's, with Parkinson's. This exact kind of tissue donation was used to make the rabies vaccine, the chickenpox vaccine, the polio vaccine. This directly relates to Americans' health. This is life-saving medical research.
Let me bring in Ms. Florina, because that certainly is one of the points that defenders of this procedure make. Fetal research has been useful in testing drugs, has been useful in finding cures for diseases. The National Institutes of Health spent $76 million on research on fetal tissue. So, you know, you may not like the way it's happening, but don't these tissues, don't these organs go for a good cause?
Well, let's just start with her comment about a heavily edited video. I mean, I find it fascinating that Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, and all the rest of the pro-abortion lobby are now suddenly so concerned about a heavily edited video. I don't recall them ever being concerned about a heavily edited video of, say, Mitt Romney at a fundraiser. I don't remember them being concerned about Edward Snowden. We've had a lot of things where information has come out that we needed to see. So instead of going after the people who have put out this video, information we clearly need to see, let's talk about the issue here. Of course they're trying to change the subject. Of course they're trying to say this is life-saving research. I just find it amazing that this group of pro-abortion lobbyists continue to say that they are protecting women's health. Really? Late-term abortion is demonstrably bad for women's health. They continue to lobby against parental notification. Really? It's protecting a teenager's health, that she can go to a tanning salon or get a tattoo with her mother's permission, but she can get an abortion without her mother's permission. This is not about someone else's health. This is about a woman's health, a woman's opportunity to have all the choices in front of her, and it is about a life that she is bearing. So let's talk about, once again, I'm pro-life, as you know, Chris, but there are plenty of pro-choice women who are horrified by this, as they should be. And by the way, after hours, honestly, the fact that these officials can sit here swilling their wine, drinking their salad, laughing over getting a Lamborghini, and talking about specimens and fetal tissue, I just find it horrifying. And the majority of Americans do as well.
Let me pick up, because there are two issues here, specifically, whether or not you are in favor or not of abortion, Ms. McIntosh. One is the altering of a procedure, and in fact, the procedure almost has to be altered in order to get the fetal body parts. There's also the question of price, because selling fetal tissue for profit, and here is undercover video of a Planned Parenthood official seeming to be haggling over price. Here she is.
What would make you happy? What would work for you?
Well, you know, in negotiations, the person who throws out the figure first is at a loss, right? So this is in the ballpark, and that's fine. If it's still low, then we can talk about it. You would. I want to land with even more.
I mean, you can't deny what you're seeing there, Ms. McIntosh. She's haggling over the price.
I saw an incredibly tasteless joke. Absolutely.
Right.
But tasteless joke is...
Wait. It was more than just a joke. She also says, when they're talking about what the price is, she says, well, the first person to offer always ends up at the low end. I mean, the law is they're allowed to recover cost.
Right.
Cost is cost. I mean, if it's $100, it's $100. But she's talking about something more than cost.
And she had also said in the same video that it had been so long since she had had a conversation where somebody wanted to discuss compensation that she didn't even know what cost was. So I think talking about the deceptively edited videos does matter when they take out the 10 times where the Planned Parenthood staffer very clearly says they wouldn't be able to sell this because it violates the law and they're not going to do that.
I think that was the other staffer. I don't think it was
the other
this
staffer.
one.
Correct. Yes. I think that Republicans maybe risk alienating folks that they're not thinking about alienating when they talk about the abortion debate the way Ms. Florina does. I think it's important to remember that 65% of the women who get abortions are moms already. And the decision when to have a child is the most important economic one that most American families will ever face. I don't believe that politicians should be involved in making that choice for them. And I do think that there are a lot
for
of
heaven's sakes,
on
the
both
left
sides of the aisle
politicians are involved in this debate all the time. And the politicians are involved in this debate all the time. Emily's List, a pro-abortion lobby organization, is involved in politics every single day. And consistently, Emily's List is lobbying for pro-abortion candidates. There is simply no justification anymore for federal funding of Planned Parenthood.
I think that
the only reason Planned Parenthood is standing up and asking to continue to be federally funded.
This will work better if you let me ask the question, because this is the last thing we're going to have time to talk about, and that is the issue of federal funding. Because Ms. Florina, you have called for an end to federal funding. It's about $500 million a year of federal funds that goes to Planned Parenthood. And I want to put up these statistics. It is, Planned Parenthood, the nation's single largest provider of abortions, 327,000 in 2013. But it also performed 487,000 breast exams and 704,000 HIV tests. Hillary Clinton says it's a matter of women's health.
I'm hoping that this situation will not further undermine the very important services that Planned Parenthood provides.
Let me pick up on that with you, Ms. Florina. I mean, doesn't Planned Parenthood do a lot of things? And if you defund them, aren't you going to lose things like breast exams and pap smears and HIV tests?
Well, gee, I thought Obamacare was supposed to take care of all that. I am so tired of the canard about women's health. There are plenty of places where women can achieve and have these services. If Planned Parenthood is so concerned about women's health, why don't they accept, for example, federal funding of pregnancy centers, one next door to every single Planned Parenthood clinic, so that women actually can look at an ultrasound before they choose to have an abortion, or so that they can have options presented to them if they choose to bring the life into the world. But no, Planned Parenthood doesn't want that. Look, this isn't about women's health. This is about Planned Parenthood wanting to preserve their political power so that they can lobby consistently on behalf of pro-abortion Democrats. Why should they be given federal funding? Why should they get federal funding so they can continue to lobby for certain candidates, as Emily's List does every single day?
Ms. Florina, Ms. McIntosh, we've just flat run out of time. I want to thank you both. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.
Up next, Republican...
How can you as a woman not support our health care?
Oh, I support your health care. I don't support the butchery of babies, and you want to go look at those videos.
I did. And I'm a researcher with the criminal justice, and I did.
That Planned Parenthood has never denied this is going on because they can't.
But your statistics are wrong.
Yeah, well, it's also
and I would
true
like you to support
that
women.
Oh, I do support women. I am a woman, man. I'm a woman, man.
So you can be a woman and not support them.
I'm here. No, you can't. So. I'm here to talk to a bunch of supportors, okay?
Thank you for talking to me.
I understand we may disagree on this, but you need to ask yourself some questions. Why is it that fetuses are aborted alive to butcher their brains? Why? You ought to also ask, you ought to look at some facts. How much money does Planned Parenthood give to Democrat candidates? This is a big political
How much money are you
game.
getting to do the abortion agenda and use lies on Planned Parenthood to win a nomination?
How much money does Planned Parenthood get to give?
I'll find out, and then we'll come back and talk.
How much money does Planned Parenthood give to Democrat candidates? You go look that up.
How much do abortion and pro-life people give you?
If you support, not a penny.
Really?
If you not a penny. And if you support women's rights, then ask yourself this: why is it Democrats won't support taxpayer funding of pregnancy centers, which also are focused on women's health, but don't have an abortion agenda? They're all privately funded.
But if we get rid rid of health rights, how will Republicans support the social services that come from all the unwanted children?
We're not getting rid of health care. That's what Planned Parenthood
But you don't like
propaganda
social
tells
services,
you.
education.
That's simply false. You need to get your facts straight, ma'am, and then we're going to have a debate over the facts.
Okay.
Because what you're talking about is rhetoric, propaganda, and lies. Okay?
That's what I'd say to you.
Chuck, thanks for having me.
You got it. Let me start right in with the Planned Parenthood situation. At the debate, the most recent debate, you described the following scene, claiming it was on a tape. A fully formed fetus on the table, its heart beating, its legs kicking, while someone says we have to keep it alive to harvest its brain. Since then, when asked about the claim, your campaign has attacked Planned Parenthood, but there is no tapes, there is no evidence that the scene you described exists. Are you willing now to concede that you exaggerated that scene?
No, not at all. That scene absolutely does exist, and that voice saying what I said they were saying, we're going to keep it alive to harvest its brain, exists as well. Here's the thing. Yesterday,
so you saw that
I was
moment
at
on the
a
tape
football game.
You saw that moment on the tape.
Yes, and I would challenge Planned Parenthood. Here's the deal. Yesterday, I was protested by Planned Parenthood people who were throwing condoms at me. I don't know what that has to do with this. They're trying to distract the American people from the hideous reality that Planned Parenthood is aborting fetuses alive to harvest their brains and other body parts. That is a fact. Planned Parenthood will not and cannot deny this because it is happening. It is happening in this nation, and taxpayers are paying for it. Planned Parenthood desperately wants everyone to think this isn't going on, because when Americans realize it is going on, whether they are pro-life or pro-choice, they are horrified. This goes to the character of our nation, and it must be stopped.
Well, the footage you described, at best, is a reenactment. The videos, even the people that made the videos, admit it's stock footage. Yet you went right along and said it's Planned Parenthood.
Chuck, do you think this is not happening? Does Hillary Clinton think this is not happening? So sad that you missed the opportunity to ask Mrs. Clinton why she said late-term abortions were only performed for medical purposes. That is patently false. This is happening in America today, and taxpayers are paying for it. That is a fact. It is a reality, and no one can run away from it.
But you are sort of ducking the video, the specific of this question. And I guess I'm trying, because let me tell you what a Washington Post... A Washington Post editorial this morning. A Washington Post editorial is calling it a full-fledged falsehood, Ms. Florina. They said,
okay,
why don't you, they said that it doesn't excuse your mistruths. They said they understand you have a deeply held belief on abortion, but that you're exaggerating this specific claim.
Well, first of all, the Washington Post also claims that I am lying about being a secretary. So let's get real. I mean, I don't even know how to deal with that. I was a secretary, part-time to put myself through college and full-time after I graduated. The Washington Post gave me 3 Pinocchios for claiming that I was a secretary. So honestly, I don't think the Washington Post has a lot of credibility here. This is not about being pro-life or pro-choice. It is certainly not about birth control. It is not even about women's health. It is about the character of our nation. No one can deny this is happening because it is happening.
Do you believe this is still something that Republicans in Congress should force a government shutdown over and have this showdown with the president?
I believe if the President of the United States and Democrats are willing to stand up and defend for what is, roughly a $500 to $600 million line item in a budget, if they are willing to stand up and defend this practice and shut down the government over it, then let them explain it to the American people.
So you want this showdown?
Explain it.
You want this? You think Republican leaders in Congress should force this showdown?
I believe there are a variety of ways to deal with this, but I believe this is something we must stand up and fight for because it is about the character of our nation. Taxpayers are funding this activity, and not only that, not only are taxpayers having to fund this butchery, but Planned Parenthood doles out millions of dollars every single election cycle to Democrat candidates. This is a political slush fund on top of being butchery that Americans, again, whether they're pro-life or pro-choice, cannot support.
Do you believe any of the money Planned Parenthood uses is for good? If from the federal government?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But you know what I find amazing? The hypocrisy of Democrats who stand up and oppose every time taxpayer funding for, say, pregnancy centers that are also very much focused on women's health. But no, Democrats don't want taxpayer funding for pregnancy centers. I just visited one in South Carolina. They are all privately funded. This is hypocrisy on Democrats' part. This is about a political slush fund. It is about the character of our nation. And yes, we should stand up and fight on this issue.
In 2010, in your Senate race, you called Roe v. Wade a decided issue. You have since said you would work to overturn it. What changed your mind?
Well, you know, here's the thing. We are finding common ground. People's views evolve on all kinds of things, and the American people's views have evolved on this. So let's just take one example. The majority of women, the majority of young people, the majority of Americans now believe that abortion for any reason at all after 5 months is wrong, just as they believe that the butchery of live fetuses for body parts is wrong. So I think we ought to pass the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act now. It is good politics. It is also good policy. And shame on Democrats who stood and blocked it, because the majority of Americans now disagree with where Democrats are. The Democrat policy is, it is not a life until it leaves the hospital. Right. The vast majority of Americans oppose that policy.
Let me play for you. There's some concerns with some Republicans, as excited as they are about your candidacy, that they're concerned your time at HP is going to be a liability a la Mitt Romney. Let me play for you an ad Barbara Boxer used against you and ask you to respond on the other side. Republicans who are still shell-shocked over what the Obama campaign was effectively able to do to Mitt Romney on the issue of layoffs, that won't happen to you. When Barbara Boxer played that ad, her lead grew.
Yeah, you know, I find it very rich. Barbara Boxer, Hillary Clinton, all the Democrats who are attacking me, they've never created a job, they've never saved a job, and their policies destroy jobs, including Mrs. Clinton's latest position on Keystone Pipeline. Look, I have run two problems all my life. It's how you go from secretary to CEO. And I think people are looking for a president who will run to the problems that this nation faces. Yes, I led HP through a very difficult time. The NASDAQ dropped 80%. Some of our strongest competitors went out of business altogether, taking every job with them. We saved 80,000 jobs. We went on to grow to 150,000 jobs. We quadrupled the growth rate of the company, quadrupled the cash flow of the company, tripled the rate of innovation of the company, and went from lagging behind to leading in every single product and every single market. I will run on that record all day long.
You don't think it will be a liability? I mean, at the end of the day, the jobs you're talking about that grew and expanded were jobs overseas. After the HP compact.
That is false.
There were no net American jobs. No?
That is false, Chuck. That is false. You know, here's the thing about business. Politicians can spin words, but in business you actually have a record of results. And in fact, I had to stand up and report those results every single quarter. And if I misrepresented our results in any way over a 6-year period or misrepresented our projections, I could be held criminally liable. Imagine if any other candidate running for president was held to that same account. There were many jobs that left California, and you know where they went? To the state of Texas, because the state of Texas had a set of policies in place that made job creation and job salvation easier than the state of California. This is what Democrats always want to talk about. They want to slam job creators. But the truth is, Democrat policies, the ones that Bernie Sanders, the ones that Hillary Clinton, and the ones that Barbara Boxer pursue, destroy jobs all day long.
Steve Ratner, in an op-ed in the New York Times, it noted that one of the things you have used to defend your time at HP and defend being fired is that people like Steve Jobs had been fired in the past, and there were other eventual successful CEOs. But he asked this question in there. Why didn't another company hire you as a CEO? Why didn't you have another full-time job in the private sector after you left HP?
Well, Steve Ratner, you know, a political operative masquerading as a business analyst. We have a couple others of those as well.
Because I didn't want to go back to work as a CEO. That's why. Because I had done that. Because I had been in a very high pressure.
Had you been recruited?
Chief executive job for. Yes, I was offered many jobs. As a CEO in the Bush administration. I wanted a break, and then I wanted to give back. And so over time, I became the chairman of 2 charities in this nation, work of which I am also very proud. I advised the CIA as the chairman of the advisory board. I advised 2 secretaries of defense, a secretary of Homeland Security. I believed it was time for me to use my experience in other realms, whether it was policy or government or charity.
Do you, what do you make of Speaker Boehner's decision? Do you think he made the correct decision to step down?
Well, I do. I think every leader has a season. And I think John Boehner's season was coming to an end, and he understood that. And I hope now that we will move on and have leadership in both the House and the Senate that will produce results. I think leaders produce results. And I think Republicans are quite frustrated, having worked very hard to restore historic majorities to the House and a majority to the Senate, that there haven't been a lot of results. And so I've asked for 3 very specific things. 1, pass a border security bill. 2, pass the REINS Act, which would give Congress the authority to oversee all of these rules that are rolling out of the administration. Of course, we talked about defunding Planned Parenthood, and it would be great, actually, if the House and the Senate would pass the bills that deny, finally, the special exemptions they get for Obamacare.
Is Mitch McConnell leading in the right way and the Senate side of things?
We will see. He has been a leader for a very short period of time, not even 1 session. Leaders produce results.
Is he producing results?
Well, we'll see.
So I take it not yet, or you're to be continued?
Well, I think we will see.
Fair enough. Carly Fiorina, stay safe on the
Let me ask you about the GOP and the trouble it's had among female voters. As you well know, in the last midterms, women were 10 points less likely than men to support Republicans. It was the largest gender gap in decades. How do you shore that up for the GOP?
Well, you know, I think the Democrats, when they talk about the war on women, we have to, I have been, putting some facts out there. So a lot of times women will come up to me and say, you know, I'm very uncomfortable with the extreme position that the Republican Party takes on abortion. And so I'll say, look, do you know what the Democratic position is? Most people don't, by the way. The Democratic policy is any abortion, any time, for any reason, at any point in a woman's pregnancy, right up until the last minute, to be paid for by taxpayers. Barbara Boxer described this policy as it's not a life until it leaves the hospital. How do you feel about that? Most women are horrified. If I ask women, how do you feel about the fact that a 13-year-old girl needs her mother's permission to go to a tanning salon, but not to get an abortion? Most women are horrified by that. How do you feel about the fact that a tattoo parlor is more rigorously regulated and inspected than an abortion clinic? Women are horrified by that. The truth is, most Americans, most women, most young people, most Americans have now come to the point of view that abortion for any reason at all after 5 months is a problem. So let's take that common ground. I think our tone matters. We can't be judgmental. We can't be angry. But I also think we have to make sure people understand the extremity on the other side.
But you say after 5 months, and you oppose abortion except in the cases of rape, incest, or if the mother's life is in danger.
I'm pro-life.
So you say,
I think,
right,
I
but I think what you're
yes.
But what you're saying is most Americans
that's right. So let's
support
find common ground.
Right. So what is the common ground?
Well, the common ground clearly now, if you look at the polls, the common ground is people believe abortion after 5 months for any reason at all is wrong. So good.
What
let's
about
take that common ground?
Yes. So where's the common ground?
ground?
So you oppose it except in the case of rape, incest, or if the mother's life in danger. So what about those who feel it should be legal for the first 5 months?
You see, Katie, I think you're just jumping over what I just said. So what the political class on both sides has done for way too long is argue at the extremes.
And in the meantime, there is real common ground. So we can argue at the extremes here, or we can say,
I'm
you know
curious,
what?
What is the common ground?
The common ground is, if you look at every poll, the majority of Americans, the majority of women, and the majority of young people now believe that abortion after 5 months, for any reason at all, is wrong. So let's pass. There was a bill that up in front of the House. Let's pass the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act.
So that's
common ground.
What is your position, though, on abortion? You're as a candidate.
I'm a pro-life candidate because I believe that science is proving us right every day. We've been doing successful surgery in utero on fetuses as young as 4 months for quite a long time. The DNA in a zygote is precisely the same as a DNA the day you die. But I understand and respect, Katie, not everyone agrees with me. What I think is, even where we don't agree on everything, let's come together and solve a problem where we have common ground. And the truth is, there are lots of children being aborted after 5 months that Americans now agree maybe we should step in and save them. So let's do that.
So do you believe that Roe v. Wade should be overturned?
You know, Roe v. Wade right now is the law of the land. Can we take on common ground right now? Let's just get that done.
So is the answer to that question no?
Let's get common ground done first.
Okay.